Welcome to Viking Preparedness. I am Pastor Joe Fox. I'm just walking down the road with a pistol in my waist. I think I'm going to start a series on bugging out. You know, the topic is much too broad to cover in just one video. Now, if you go on YouTube, elsewhere on YouTube, you can find lots and lots of information on bug out bags. Heck, I even have a couple videos on bobs. A lot of people, unfortunately, think that if they have a bob, they're good to go for bugging out. And I would tell you that's not so. And so the first thing we're going to look at, the first topic, if you will, about bugging out is where are you going to go? Where are you going to run to? A lot of people would consider Shofar Mountain an ideal bug out location, right? We're off the beaten path. We can produce food, water, you know, things like that. It's like, wow, it's a great place to bug out. But do you know that we have bug out plans at Shofar Mountain? We certainly do. We have different locations to which we plan to flee, if you will, should something happen that requires that. And you need that. You cannot just flee blindly into the cold, dark night. That's not a good plan. That's not a plan at all. You got to have somewhere to go. That place you go depends on a lot of things. I guess the first and most important thing that it depends on is what is the threat that is causing you to flee anyway. You know, when I lived in the Kansas City area, and I've said this before on videos, one of the things we had was a very fast bug out plan if we heard that the Yellowstone caldera had gone off. And we were going to flee south very rapidly to get away from the ash cloud that was coming down. And then we were going to hook west and come up. So we were going to go downwind of it and then get upwind of it, if you will. That was our plan, right? And it wasn't just running in that direction. We had places along the route that we had coordinated for that we were going to go to. And so, you know, it's not too much to think that you should have at least places in two vastly different directions, you know, one to the north and one to the east, or one to the north and one to the west, or, you know, something like that from your current location. And so what kind of places could those be? Ideally, it would be with other preppers, two other preppers with whom you have some kind of agreement. You know, you can, mi casa su casa, right? You can come to my place if things warrant it, or I'll run to your place if things warrant it. And working those out is tricky sometimes, but it's also important. It requires you to be a little bit vulnerable, right? You have to lay yourself out there a little bit. You have to go meet people. How do you do that? Another video for another time. But you have to have a place to go. Maybe Aunt Millie. You know, I always refer to Aunt Millie. Maybe Aunt Millie has a little farmette, you know, a couple hundred miles away or something. You'll hear a lot of people pontificate online about bugging out, and they mean well. How about we just leave it at that? You'll never be able to bug out if something happens. That depends entirely on what happens. I mean, you know, you could have to bug out for lots of different reasons. When I was 5 years old, I was living in a country in Southeast Asia, and the Mekong River flooded higher above its banks than it had ever flooded in recorded history. And we had to evacuate through enemy territory to another more safe place that was still kind of really close to enemy territory. I remember that evacuation. We started out in a truck, we got on some boats, and I remember thinking it was really cool because there were guys on machine guns on the boats, and then we went from the boats to an airfield, got on an airplane, and flew somewhere else. So, you know, multi-stages to get away. But, you know, we had time. You would have time if you knew a hurricane was coming, you know, a huge Katrina-esque hurricane to bug out. And as long as you leave early enough and have a plan, you should do fine. But I encourage you to sit down while you can, work the phone, work the email, go somewhere for Thanksgiving, you know, reestablish ties with people, but come up with a couple different locations that you and yours could flee to which you and yours could flee. Establish some areas. Then you can start doing better planning. You know, you can work multiple routes to that location. You can put in caches if you have to. You can figure out what your gas requirements are going to be, yada, yada, yada. But you got to have a place to go. Where are you going to run to? All right, so while you're contemplating that, I'm going to put a link down there for a cool song. You can listen to the song, think about it, and then let's take this a level higher while you're doing that. While you're thinking about where you're going to run to, think about who or what is your rock. What do you cling to? It's going to be important. All right, I'll see you out there.